that I've used previously. And the textbook that you have, Northhouse, doesn't include the normative decision-making model. And so there's no perfect textbooks that, oh, perfect, I'm sorry, there aren't any textbooks that cover everything that I think is important that they would cover. If they did, then they would include those. And so when Lauren talked about motivational theory, this author doesn't include motivation, which is important. We're going to talk about locus of control later on. Your author doesn't include locus of control, but I think it's important. And doesn't include the normative decision-making model, but it's something very, I think it's very practical. Okay, in situational leadership, leaders change their behaviors to match the followers' needs. Thank you. Path goal theory centers on how leaders motivate their followers to accomplish goals. We already talked about Lmx being prescriptive. What does it mean to be prescriptive? It's a prescription. Dan?
Use it when you need to.
It tells you how to use it. Your prescription. It tells you how to use it. And so Lmx says, hey, you need to concentrate on relationship. And so I think Amber said probably the most important when we talked on Tuesday and said, Barney really needs to go to have some leadership education. That's what you would hope would happen in a leadership development program, is Barney would say, the light would go on and he said, the problem isn't Lily, the problem has been me. I haven't concentrated on relationship. Okay. 4, in Lmx theory, leaders unwittingly assign members to those two groups, in-group and out-group. Lmx supports what we believe to be true about leaders and groups, that members aren't all treated fairly, and we spent a lot of time talking about that people feel like they aren't treated fairly. Where leaders establish high-quality leader-member exchanges, we can expect all those things. We can expect less employee turnover, better job attitudes, faster career progress, greater organizational commitment. All those say, gosh, I want to develop a high-quality relationship with all my followers if I can. 7, you are a student worker in the forage lab. Your boss says, please come to the potluck. They aren't coming around to remind you that you're not supposed to come. They aren't supposed to tell you that you're not part of it. They're trying to make you feel like you're in the in-group. I personally came around and said, try my Mexican chicken casserole. They don't get this quiz, though. So, okay. Yeah. And so that was Aaliyah that lived with us. The one food that she remembers her father making was Mexican Dorito chicken casserole. Has anyone had Mexican Dorito chicken casserole? And so it's an entire bag of Doritos that you lay in the pan, and then you take like 2 cans of cream of mushroom and cream of chicken soup, and you pour on that, and then you take some like rotisserie chicken that you stole or bought from Walmart, and you put that on there, and then you take a whole package of cheddar cheese that you got through food stamps or illegally, and you put that on top, and then you bake it. And it's why I was weighing 219 this summer. 203. Feeling pretty good. Anyway, and you can't stop eating it. But it's incredibly unhealthy for you. 8, in-group members get all of the things except you don't get a lot of social interaction with the leader because you're not like the leader. They don't like to be around you. You don't like to be around them. 9, leaders member.
Wait, the in-group isn't like the leader?
The in-group gets all of the, the in-group gets all of those except.
Okay.
Oh.
That doesn't make sense.
No, that doesn't. 8 isn't a good question. Why didn't you ask 8? 8's a terrible question. In-group get all of those. They get mutual trust. They get respect. Oh, I'm sorry. It's C. It's higher turnover. They don't get higher turnover. I'm sorry. Apologize. In-group members do not get higher turnover. not really good when the instructor is confused by his own question. Anyway, so maybe that'll make up for giving you it. Oh, okay. 9, leader-member exchange focuses on leader-follower. Interaction. 10, what could a follower do to try to get in the in-group? You could try and do more than is asked. You can try and do more than is asked of you, and you might get a chance to be in the in-group. Okay. Normative decision-making. Okay, now, is it going? Normative decision-making model. Do I make the decision myself, or do I involve others? In a few minutes, we're going to use this example. President Hargis is going to have to decide whether to allow guns on campus. Well, he doesn't, not today, but it's really an issue on campus whether you can have guns on campus or not. Whether you would like to have a gun on campus. My son, former Marine, thinks he would like to have a gun on campus if he's a student. His rationale is if there was a shooter on campus, he'd be able to protect others and take them out. Okay? That's his rationale. I'm suggesting that Joel's having a bad day. He brings a weapon with him. Maybe if I call him out in class, may decide that maybe he'd like to take me out. Okay? So whether to have guns on campus, some people are for it and some people against. Fair? Okay, we're going to work through that in just a little bit. So this, if you have a highlighter, today you might want to use it. If you have a pencil or pen, you may want to use it, because I want to draw attention to, in this 4-page handout, a couple paragraphs that are really important. Let's see if I put the screen up for once. Didn't mean to do that. So what I have on the board is just what's here. Should a leader... Wait a second. Should a leader make a decision by themselves, or should they involve followers? Underline that. Highlight it. Circle it. That's the question that the decision-making model will answer. Okay? It will answer that question. Okay? Now, it assumes, on the next page, it assumes these two things. The model relies on two well-established group dynamic principles. First, research findings that groups are wasteful and inefficient. It says we assume that doing things in groups is wasteful and inefficient. Anyone agree and say, I think I got a great example of that? Anyone say, I agree, and I think I have a mediocre example of that? Amber, you get something?
Yeah, humans.
Humans, that's how people are?
That's how we are as a whole in the world, and then in different subsections like cooperatives, you could argue the opposite, because I'm pretty sure cooperatives would say grouping together is better for us, that's why we do it.
Is it wasteful to do things in a group? Wouldn't it be easier for you just to study leadership by yourself? You had to drive in here or come here, and then sometimes you go to a class and its class is canceled. Think about when you were in grade school. Oh, but anybody homeschooled? Homeschooled for how long? 5 years. 5 years? No. So I think about my kids when they were in grade school, and about, not that I was seriously considering homeschooling them, but what they did in school. And I think what they did in school, I could have done, we could have started like at 9 in the morning, and by 11 we'd been done. And if we had 600 acres of flat black land, I could have worked those kids all the rest of the day. Okay, and I think some kids that are homeschooled, I think that's what happens. Or if we had a grocery store, I'd say we're gonna a little small restaurant or something, from 9 to 11, we're going to have school. And the rest of the time, you kids wait on tables and start working, right? I don't know if you were old enough to start working or not, but in sparsely populated areas, I'm convinced that kids might go to school some and then work a bunch of other times. Because all the time in 3rd, 4th, 1st, whatever grade, how much time was wasted while you're sitting around waiting for other things to happen? You're waiting for other people to get finished. You're having to wait for, you just sit around lots of times. Doing things in groups is wasteful. Making decisions in groups is wasteful. Okay? When we did paper and tape, okay, the group that had the Democratic leader who had to ask everybody's opinion, it took all kinds of time. The autocratic group, were you autocratic group? Much faster. They got more done because Steve told them what they were supposed to do. Tell me what to do and do it. In groups, we have to get everyone's opinion and how they feel about things. Okay? What's your reaction? Are you in favor of that? And so this decision of whether to involve people or to make the decision myself says that involving people takes time, is wasteful and inefficient. Okay? The second thing it says, though, in comparison is that participation in decision-making leads to commitment, which says, in another way, if you want commitment from people, you will involve them in the decision-making. So those two things tug at each other. It's terribly inefficient and wasteful to involve people. On the other hand, if I want commitment from people, I will involve them. Oh, so when do I do one and when do I do other, which is what our question was. When do I make the decision myself and when do I involve others? Crystal clear? We know exactly what we're trying to do here? Okay. Now, like path goal, it's more complicated than it needs to be. And so this thing down here at the bottom, for now, let's ignore that. Okay? For now, let's ignore that. Turn it over. Contingency factors. For now, let's ignore that. Okay? And go to this page, which you probably said is even worse. And this is the normative decision-making model. Okay? So this model says that we start, it's a decision tree. You start here and you ask questions, and whether you say yes or no, you will move the direction. And then over here will be what you were supposed to do. Now, if you aren't asking this now, you will ask this at the end. Just like path goal, you say, does anybody use this? Does anybody sit down and say, I have to decide who's going to take vacation this summer and work out this model? No. No one does that. But the principles that it employs, people may use. Okay? So this this one on the third page is our key. Okay? So we have to use this. So if you'll maybe have this in front of you and this on the screen, we can follow along. Okay? I'm going to be tied because my muscles still hurt. Okay, so QR, state the problem. What's the problem, Ross? Do you remember?
No, sir, I do not.
I like honesty. That is really good. Kaylin?
Whether or not to involve followers in the decision?
Yes, that ultimately, but what's the question I said we were going to pose? Guns on campus. Should President Hargis, who's the boss man, should he allow there to be guns on campus or not? Okay. So QR is quality requirement. It's up at the top too, but you're not be able to see this. So the question is, how important is the technical quality of the decision? How important is that he gets that right? Okay. So Chance, how important is it that he gets that right, that we have guns on campus or not have guns on campus?
I'd say
Pretty important, really important, not very important. Pretty important. Anyone say, I don't think it's really important what he decides on this? Raise your hand if you think it's really important what he decides on this. Okay, fair? Okay. So here then we say, okay, we're going this way, right? So now we get to QR. Okay? And QR up the top says, how important is it that subordinates, who are the subordinates? If you're president of the university, who are the subordinates? Yes. Students, absolutely. People that do all the work? Oh, no, I mean, no, like the staff and custodians, stuff like that. And then there's faculty, yeah. It's not really CR. And you have it in front of you. Okay? So CR says, how important is the subordinate's commitment to the decision? How important is it that whatever I decide, people are committed and they say, yeah, that's what we're going to do? Donors, students, because donors come on campus and drink and then also go to football games once in a while. At least they go to the first half. How important is it that all those, they do. They sit in the parking lot, and if Jarrell isn't doing his job, they stay in the parking lot for the second half. It's just the reality of tailgating. That's what we bought into when we did this. How important is it that students, faculty, staff, everyone agrees with or is committed to whatever I decide? If they're not committed, they'll say, I don't care, I'm going to carry a firearm anyway. Or, I'm going to work against you. So very important. So we stay with this and we keep going up high. Now we're at LI, leader's information. Do you, as leader, do you have sufficient information to make a high-quality decision? Okay, not easy. I'm President Burns Hargis. Do I have enough information myself to be able to make this decision of whether to allow guns on campus or not?
He used statistics, yes.
If he used statistics. So he's a banker. You hope he has enough information. Shaking your head, no, you don't. He's the leader. And you'd say, I don't think Burns Hargis has enough information by himself to be able to make that decision. Anyone argue the other way? You'd say, I think he's got plenty of information. Okay, so let's keep going. Move up the decision tree. So now we're at CP. If you were to make the decision by yourself, see if I did that right. Leaders, do you have information? Oh, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Thank you for making me flumble. We said no, right? Okay, this is where audience participation is important. ST, problem structure. Is the problem well structured? Meaning, do we understand and do we know what the problem is? Steve, yeah, it's pretty clear. Either we're going to have guns on campus or we're not going to have guns on campus. So we say yes. And we come here to CP and say, if you were to make the decision by yourself, is it reasonably certain that your subordinates, faculty, staff, students, alums, would be committed to the decision? If you, as the president, said, this is what I'm going to do, and made that decision yourself, is it reasonable that everyone would fall in line and say, yeah, that's what we're going to do?
No.
Jinu, did you say no?
I said no.
Okay. Jinu, will you tell me why Amber says no?
Is it reasonable that... What was your question?
If I make the decision myself, will everyone be committed? Is it reasonable to think that everyone's going to be committed? And you can probably only speak for yourself. You'd say, if the president decides this, am I behind him 100%?
Personally or like...
Well, that's, you can only really speak for yourself, right?
Well, I don't think everyone's going to agree on it. I don't know.
If he just makes the decision himself?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll take Jinu's answer there. And so she says no. And we go to GC. And GC says, do subordinates alums, faculty, staff, students, donors. Do subordinates share the organizational goals to be attained in solving the problem? What are the organizational goals that are pertaining to this problem? Safety on campus? Do subordinates, do faculty, staff, students, alums, do they share the idea that campus should be safe? Yeah, sure. Okay, so we're here, so we go yes, and you say, this is unbelievable. Now we're at CO, subordinate conflict. Is conflict among the subordinates over the preferred solutions likely? Didn't I write right? Well, I think the answer is yes. There's going to be all kinds. And so that says we should do G2. You say, what the hell is G2? And you go back to this one. And these are the choices that you make. It isn't really just as simple as the leader would either make the decisions or would involve other ones. It's a continuum. You could have all kinds of things. So look, before you go to G2 or after you go to G2, see that A1 is the leader makes the decision. A2 is you would ask for information, but you still make the decision. C1 is you would ask for information, get ideas from the group, but you still make the decision. And all the way down here to D1 is you would let someone else just make the decision. So in some ways, it's kind of this continuum which says here on this end, I'm autocratic, I'm making the decision, and you say, I remember autocratic, where the leader is directive, makes the decision, yeah. Okay. Where C is consultative, which say, well, that kind of sounds like democratic, right, where you involve others. And then G, which is group, where you'd have the group make the decision. You're kind of delegating. And then D1 is, if it only affected an individual, you'd say, you just decide what it is you want to do. Now, how satisfied are you with this? Do you think we make... So, I'm sorry. G2 was, the group shares information and ideas and reaches consensus. The group, with the leader input, makes the decision. So there would be open forums, there would be meetings you could go and tell your view of what you should do, and you could explain why you should have a firearm and why other people shouldn't, and everyone would get a chance to have involvement, and the group would make a decision with the input from Burns-Hargis, because it's something that affects every single one of us. And so everyone wants to have a piece of the pie. How long would that take? Yes, that would be a very vague amount of time, but can you be more specific?
A year, 2 years?
It might take 2 years, Dan says, in order to decide what we're going to do. Is that okay?
Yes and no. I mean, it just depends on if it's a pending problem, which this wouldn't. So I think 2 years would be fine.
Because you'd say the commitment is really important. It is so important that I have commitment from people on this that that's what we have to spend the time. We've got to make sure everybody feels like they're involved. Okay? Because if they're not, then we're going to have people doing their own thing. So let's go back to this idea. Should the leader make the decision or involve followers? If I absolutely need commitment, then I'm willing to put up with this inefficiency and waste, because everybody's got to feel like they're part of this. Okay? But if they don't, we've got a parking lot out here, and you all are going to have parking spots out here. And you'll be assigned to an individual parking space. Okay? Should I, as the leader, decide, or do you want to make this a group decision? So without using the model, because I hope what you'd say is, again, no one sits down and draws this out. But they might kind of draw it out in their head. Okay? So again, we've got a parking lot. You're all going to have a spot. I'm the leader. I've got some choices here to make. Any thoughts, just kind of without following the model through, of whether I should just decide, whether you should decide, whether there should be something in between?
If you just want to make it faster,
Okay, faster.
just do leader, but also,
It's faster if I would just make the decision, yes.
yeah, and you wouldn't have people hate each other. They'd be hating you for choosing the spot.
Oh, okay.
They got a bad one.
Okay, Ty, how do you, whether this was your spot or this was your spot, are you willing to go to war over that? Or do you say, that's my spot? Weeks said that's my spot.
Well, for me, if that was a left-handed desk, then that would be my spot right there.
Okay, let's assume that we don't have left-handed parking spaces, okay? Okay. Make a note. Jesse's trying to get me off track here. I don't like that. He's not in the out group, but he's at the bottom of the in group. Try to stay with me.
I'd just do a random drawing for the spots and get it over with.
If you were me, you would and then you'd all be like, hey, I didn't do favoritism. Okay, so I could do that, or I could, I could people that anyway, I could do lots of things, but that would be one way that would be defensible, right? Okay.
Or you would just do exactly what they did here. If you get here early and you care that much about class, you're going to get a spot.
There are 38 numbered ones. You take any one of the 38, first come, first serve. Okay? That's a solution also. I could make that decision. And so both of those are, I'm making the decision. Does anybody say, I think I want to involve people in the decision making? Shada, how long is it going to take us if we did G2, group shares information, ideas, reaches consensus with my input, but you all figure out how long would it take? A while. Maybe it's back to Dan's 2 years, because my God, I'm going to get my spot, and I get to be heard, right? And we have these meetings, and everyone gets to have their input, and we have to listen. And oh my gosh, our head hurts. And then people say, I don't care. I don't even want to park in that spot anymore. It's so. Two decisions that someone would make. One, you'd say, yes, very wasteful, but necessary. Another one, yes, very wasteful, but unnecessary. And so from a leadership perspective, at some point, in some instance, I just need to make the decision. Okay? And in some cases, based on whether I need commitment from you. And what we agreed was, if you're going to have a gun on campus, I need you to be all committed to it. And the other example, whether you can park in a certain space, you don't really need to be committed to that. It just is what it is. And that's simply that question: do I need commitment or don't I need commitment? Sometimes leaders don't think about the commitment at all. They just make the decisions. I'm the decision maker. Okay? I make all those decisions. But sometimes we need followers to be on board with us, right? Okay, so let's see if we can apply this to another situation. Okay, it's a short case. And those of you watching in your pajamas, you have this case in terms of the Regional Community Food Bank. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Decision for the Normative section, is it out of your,
Yeah, no, Havani, I think. Correct. Yeah, and it's right. Where's path? So contingencies right before. So it's this whole chapter on contingency that has, all these different ones. And so I really like how it's organized because Northouse, again, you don't have to this way, but because it's a separate chapter, it's almost as if it's just as important as any of the other ones. And that's up to me how important I say this.
Do we need to answer this question on paper, or are we going to talk about it in class?
Well, I'm not sure what to say about that. You could just answer them in your head, or you could write them down, but you won't hand it in. That's.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so some of you probably figured, well, let's use the model, right? Okay, so we've got some interns to hire. And so the question is whether you, as the president or CEO of the food bank, decides who to hire, or whether you let other people decide that. Spud Becker is one of my good friends from high school. Spud lived down the street from the high school, lived in town. For Spud's FFA project, he got 2 bulldogs, Sam and Samantha. He was going to raise bulldogs. Okay, bulldogs are, anybody familiar, they have a great big head, so you have to deliver them by cesarean section because they've been bred such that they can't normally have vaginal births, which is crazy that we've done this. But anyway, because Spud was a townie, that was he going to do, and they found out that one of them was sterile, and so he just ended up with these 2 real expensive bulldogs. And several of us went away to college, and Spud went to work for Caterpillar down in Peoria, Illinois, sweeping floors, and did that. Made really good money. And so I remember coming home from college, and Spud bought a brand new car. I think it was like a 1982 Pontiac Trans Am with like a big bird on the hood and stuff. I'm paying money to go to school, and Spud's sweeping floors and making really good money. I said, something's wrong with this. But I thought, you know what, though? In the long run, I'll be better off. Spud's going to be sweeping floors. Spud left Peoria and went to work for ADM, or Continental Grain, on the Illinois River, loading barges of grain to go down the Illinois River, down the Mississippi, down to New Orleans. Eventually went to work for Archer Daniels Midland in Decatur, Illinois. And then Spud was vice president for grain elevators for everything east of the Mississippi, and then he's responsible for all of grain elevators nationwide for ADM. And when people talk about him, they talk to me about Mr. Becker this and Mr. Becker that. And so Spud makes more money every year than I ever will, probably makes more money each year than I've ever made, has a nice vacation home on the Ozarks, and anyway. But the interns that intern for ADM, Spud wants to be involved in all the interviews. They will employ maybe 100 interns. And so if you get to an interview, they'll fly you up to Decatur, and Spud wants to be in on those. Every summer, they take several days, and they go on the Illinois River, and they clean up all the some of the trash along the river. And Spud's out there because he wants to interact with the interns. He calls every one of the interns, and they're all over the United States, and wants to know how they're doing during their summer internship program. So he's very hands-on. And so I use that example because it is possible to be that way with these interns, and because that's how Spud is with his interns. I'm not saying that's what should be done, but that's what he does. Should I let other people make the decision, or is this an important enough decision that I need to make it myself? Well, Spud thinks anything with the interns is important, and so that's why he's on the interviews, and he does the river cleanup, and he calls them, and he wants to get to know the interns. And he's he's a big deal in this company. But the interns that they hire, he wants contact with them. Okay? So I just tell you that story that it's not unfathomable that we would do that. Okay? So in this case, let's go start again. QR, quality of requirement. How important is the technical quality of the decision? Anyone?
Hi.
Who said hi? Because?
Because if they stay on as a full-time employee, he's going to be over them for a long period of time.
Two ways of thinking about interns. Interns are summer workers that will go back to school, and the other is these people may come back and work here, and I'm cultivating employees, and so you're in that camp, right? Did anyone say, not that really important, they're just interns? Okay, you could argue that. You could argue they're interns and not, okay? So, at least for all y'all, you're here. CR, how important is it that there's subordinate commitment to the decision? Now, how important is it that the people that these interns are going to work for are committed to whoever I hire?
Very important.
Okay. So I could hire some flunkies, and then I'm supervising these knotheads, right? And so you're making my job harder because I have to babysit these interns that are here. And so, Helen, you're saying, I think it's high. Okay, well, if that's the case, then we'll go to LI. LI then is, does Spud have, in this case the leader have, do you have sufficient information to make a high quality decision? Carolyn?
I think so. I mean, obviously it's like the trying to head of it.
Is there any case where you'd say, if I change this around in this case study, we would say no?
I think because the executive directors just recently been hired, they don't have.
You'd say, I don't know enough about what's going on. Now, you're saying, Carolyn, that lots of experience in this field, I know what interns do. That would be, so I'm putting, if you open your mouth, I could make those come out. But that would be the response is, oh, I think so. Right? But obviously, there's two different ways of thinking about it. Okay? So if it's yes, you said, then we go to CP. Commitment probability. If you were to make the decision by yourself, is it reasonably certain that your subordinates would be committed to your decision?
No.
Yes.
Okay. If I decide the interns, is it reasonable that the people that are going to supervise those interns are committed to that?
I would say yes originally. I mean, because at the beginning you have to give everybody the benefit of the doubt that we're going to be able to get along. Now, yes, 6 months down the road, and interns.
No, they're interns. So let's say
I would say yes.
2 weeks when you do something stupid, you come in late, you come back from lunch drunk, and I mean.
Well, the extreme of that, no, but.
I'm just saying, the intern does something stupid, which interns do, right? And so, as your supervisor, I say, Joel hired him. I never would have hired Dylan. Never would have done it. So, is that where your no's coming from?
Yeah, kind of. I was thinking more along the lines of they might not trust their leader yet. They haven't had enough time.
Oh, back to what Lauren says, as far as they're kind of new here.
So the leader doesn't have the buy-in of their subordinates unless their subordinates are helping make the decisions too.
So now try and take yourself out of the leader position and say, now I'm the supervisor of this intern. Would I like to be able to hire my interns, or do I want my boss man to hire the interns? And I think you're saying, gosh, it'd be nice if I got to hire them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't agree with that.
Who do you think should hire the interns, bottom line?
I think both. But, I mean, just like
okay.
if you hire a supervisor, that's their job is to supervise. So if you go over my head and but like if boss man comes in and does what he wants, why you have a supervisor?
You've gone here and said, I don't want them making the decision by themselves, but they are the boss man, but I'd like to be involved somewhere in here. Is that
Yeah, absolutely.
okay?
That way everyone's on the same page. Because then Like, the supervisor can't throw it in their face, like, oh, I wouldn't hire this guy.
So G2 would be, you decide, but I want to weigh in. And I would say something like, well, this is one of our donors' nephews, and they would like to... Okay, so go back to this. Remember, skill, conceptual, okay, what those people at the top, they see the big picture, okay? So Joel says, I want to hire somebody that knows something about gardening for the garden intern one. Okay, that would be really important. I, as CEO, say, I'd like to hire this donor's nephew because they're going to give $3 million if we have them as an intern this summer. Right? You think short term, I want to make sure the garden. I think long term, I think we get $3 million out of this person.
That's when you discuss it.
I've got to convince Joel that you can put up with this knothead for the summer that doesn't know anything about agriculture, and maybe you can learn him something, because I'd have to convince him of that.
Yeah, doing that would be a lot better than saying, hey, you're going to hire this kid because I said so.
Which is over here, I decided.
Does that really make you mad?
Is it fair to say there's interpretation here? Okay. Should I involve other people? Gosh, it'd be, if these people are going to supervise them, they should have something. But again, buck stops here. I'm in charge of everything. And so what I heard, maybe you need to convince these other people that they're the right hire. So from the start, simple. Then we made it so complicated because we said, I only got 4 pages, I don't know why I can do this. Then we said this, but nobody uses this. But they do think about, do I need commitment from people? Now, again, what did we say about, what do we know about meetings and involving people? It's a waste of time. It's wasteful and inefficient. I don't know. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to meet together Friday afternoon for 3 hours to hash out these interns. Wouldn't it just be quicker if I just decided? That's what you have to balance. Okay? Maybe I can keep you on track. Maybe we don't need 3 hours. Maybe we could do an hour. Maybe everybody doesn't have to say all about their feelings about every one of them. Maybe we don't have to have a group hug at the end. But maybe I could hear what you're saying about what you want, and you could hear what I'm saying about what I want. Okay? Normative decision-making model. Very practical, something we can use. Okay? I'll be gone next week. I will probably have access to email. I doubt that I'll respond if you email me something. Lauren can answer, I think, any question that you'd have. You have class on Tuesday, transformational. Thursday, you have this is an A&M thing. At A&M, they call it a walk. They'd say, oh, Prof, just give us a walk. And again, being from Illinois, what are you talking about? A walk was you don't have to come to class. So you have a walk on Thursday. Don't come to class. Coming back, we'll have a review the next Tuesday, and their second exam is on that Thursday. Lauren, anything they need to know?
Be here Tuesday.
Be here Tuesday. I like that. Okay, see you.